right, today we're heading to a small town in Devon, England, that kind of feels like it exists in multiple centuries all at once. Seriously, it's a place where ancient myths, medieval castles, and really modern radical ideas all share the same exact cobbled streets. This is the story of Totnes, and believe me, it is a fascinating one. So all of this gives it this reputation for being, well, different. And it makes you wonder, could this actually be England's strangest, most interesting town? We're going to dive into the evidence, and then you can decide for yourself. It's a place that just seems to thrive on contradiction, and that's what makes it so compelling.
I mean, just look at its modern-day resume. Totnes is the birthplace of the global sustainability movement known as transition towns. It went and created its own currency, the Totnes pound, just to support its local businesses. And back in 2012, it famously looked at a giant coffee corporation and basically said, nope, not here. Add that to a high street that's packed with independent shops, and you can see why people call it the UK's alternative capital. So what is it that makes this one small town so fiercely independent?
Well, to answer that, we have to look way beyond the last few decades. We need to go way back. Because the deep roots of this town's rebellious spirit, they aren't found in a recent protest, but in a really powerful founding myth. So, legend has it, these were the very first words spoken on British soil. And the speaker? Brutus of Troy, the mythical founder of Britain itself. The story goes that after landing on the banks of the River Dart, he made this grand proclamation, placing Totnes right at the very beginning of the entire nation's story. And this is how seriously Totnes takes its stories. This legend isn't just some fairy tale. It is physically embedded in the high street. This little granite boulder, the Brutus stone, is a real, tangible link to that mythic past. It's a piece of folklore you can literally go and stand on today. Okay, so a founding myth is one thing, right? But a town's identity can't be built on folklore alone. The verifiable, concrete history of Totnes is etched into its stone, its wood, and its castle walls. So what stories do these buildings have to tell us? You can pretty much trace the town's entire evolution right here. It started out as a strategic Saxon fort against Viking raids. Then it was dominated by a Norman castle. Later, huge wealth from the wool and tin trade built its magnificent church, and its civic identity was really forged in the Tudor Guildhall. But look at that final point, that cycle of reinvention from a military fort to an eco-hub, that's a constant theme here. And the really crucial thing to get is that these buildings aren't just ruins, they are living, breathing history. The Norman castle is one of the best preserved of its kind anywhere. St. Mary's Church has this incredibly rare medieval screen inside. And the Guildhall, well, its story of continuous use is maybe the most remarkable of them all. Just stop and think about this for a second. In 1646, Oliver Cromwell sat in the Guildhall with General Fairfax to plan the final bloody stages of the English Civil War. The oak table they used? It is the very same one the Totnes Town Council uses for its meetings today. I mean, that's not history behind a glass case. It's history that has been in active, continuous use for over 350 years. It's just incredible. So we've got the epic myth, and we've got the monumental history. But a town's true character, that often reveals itself in the smaller, stranger details. You know, the whispers, the quirky traditions, and the local legends that fill in all the gaps. And this contrast just says it all. On one hand, you have the ancient, very serious myth of the Brutus stone, and on the other, you have the annual orange race, this wonderfully chaotic tradition where people literally chase oranges down the high street. Supposedly, it commemorates Sir Francis Drake dropping his fruit, but honestly, it's just a perfect symbol of the town's playful, eccentric spirit. And oh, there's more. You've got the Leech Well, 3 ancient springs that are said to have healing powers. You have haunted castles nearby with their ghostly white ladies. You can even see the actual grooves in the church walls where medieval archers sharpened their arrowheads centuries ago. It seems like every single corner has a story to tell. But, you know, myths and buildings are really just the stage. A town's story is ultimately defined by the people who walk its streets, from the Norman conquerors all the way to modern-day pioneers. And what a cast of characters has walked these streets. I mean, you've got the Norman lord who built the first castle. Then there's Charles Babbage, the father of the computer, who went to school here. You've got the tragic explorer William John Wills, the famous novelist Mary Wesley, and of course Rob Hopkins, who launched a global movement from this very town. It's just this incredible mix of pioneers, visionaries, and rebels. Which, of course, brings us right back to our central puzzle. How does all of this, the myths, the medieval money, the explorers, the inventors, how does it all lead to the fiercely independent alternative hub that Totnes is today? Well, the answer seems to lie in this really unique sequence of events. First, its strategic foundation created a center of power. Then, prosperity from trade built all the beautiful architecture. But here, and this is the crucial twist, economic decline meant the town was never really modernized. It accidentally preserved its historic, human-scale character. And it was that preserved, authentic spirit that became a magnet for artists, activists, and freethinkers centuries later. And the result of that entire journey? Well, it's this stunning statistic. Over 90% of the businesses on the Totnes High Street are independent. That's a direct legacy of that centuries-long path, a community that clearly values its unique character over corporate sameness. So when you boil it all down, the crucial point is this. Totnes isn't just one thing. It's a rare place where the myth of Britain's founding shares the same cobbled streets with experiments in future living. It's where Norman history and New Age ideas don't just coexist side by side, they actually intertwine. And that leaves us with one final question to think about. In a place like Totnes, what is ultimately more powerful in shaping its identity? The solid physical history of its castle and its churches, or the stories, from those ancient myths to modern protests, that its people choose to tell about themselves? The answer, I think, lies somewhere in the unique soul of this truly remarkable town.